you guys so much for joining us for the episode. Let me tell you why. I'm so excited for this episode, and I'll tell you why. We have a segment on the show. It's called Sean's UFO Crop Circle, and Dan has his true crime part of the thing. I've been into the topic for years. Our guest today is amazing. You know him from all the shows on TV, Ancient Aliens, all the shows on TV about the topic of UFOs. I've been listening to his podcast for years. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Sprague.
Thank you so much for coming, Ryan.
My pleasure.
Can I make just an observation, a physical observation first? He has magical Christmas face. Doesn't he look like a villager in a Christmas movie? He's like, we are going to save Christmas.
That is the first.
Like those poppy sparkling. Like, look, that's like. Look at that. It looks like.
This is coming from a guy who plays a Yeti.
I know. Well,
he plays a Yeti in the Michaels commercial.
I look like the first person they talked to when John Bonet went missing, but he's got Christmas face.
That is the first.
The guy I work with has Christmas face too, Christian. We have Santa face, but you have like the joy of Christmas.
You have Orthodox Hanukkah face.
Orthodox Hanukkah face.
Ryan, thanks so much for doing the show. That is true. I've been listening to your podcast for years. We have a common friend, very funny comedian, Robert Dean, who you knew from back home. And we on the podcast, we have that one section, but it is the thing that I've been obsessed with for years. But you are from the suburbs as well, obviously. Not obviously, but we know that for a fact. So we always start off saying, because you grew up where?
Syracuse.
Syracuse. Okay, cool. In Syracuse, besides Dinosaur Barbecue, did you have any other urban legends in Syracuse?
Yeah, so I was racking my brain for stuff because it's been a while since I've been
there.
Yeah. But there was one I specifically remember. There was another suburb outside of Syracuse called Solvay.
Okay.
And there was this urban legend about the missing cats of Solvay.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, this gets a little problematic, so I apologize.
No, go say whatever.
So back during...
What if he just starts talking about how black people aren't as smart as white people? It had nothing to do with cats at all. We're like, no, we didn't mean that. We didn't mean that.
You'll be surprised where this story's going.
Oh, Jesus, no.
Well, back during, I think it was World War I, a bunch of I want to say it was Armenian immigrants came to Syracuse, New York, immigrated there. And at the time, back when the Depression and people were starving and everything, there were rumors that lot of these immigrants in the olden times, they would resort to eating cats. So for decades and decades, I mean, probably up until today, I'm sure kids are.
It's still a thing.
Telling this that all the Armenian immigrants, and there's a lot of them in the area, eat cats. So on the racist side. It's
in the racist neighborhood.
It's
for
there,
sure.
Adjacent.
I just have never heard that stereotype. I lived in Glendale.
Well, it's not a stereotype. It's an urban legend.
It's an urban legend. Well, I lived in Glendale. The only thing that I knew about Armenians was they loved white BMWs. They just, every time I saw an Armenian, he was in a white BMW.
I know the urban legend of Drakkar Noir and the Armenians. And ground effects on your white BMW that make it look like it's floating. Yeah, they're like the Armenians are like what, Middle Eastern Guidos, right? Like that's basically I grew up on Long Island and we just had like Italian Guidos, but I guess there's all types of Guidos.
Guido is it's like hillbilly. You know how there's like they say there's like British rednecks. They say there's like black and Latino rednecks. It's like that kind of
really quickly. I don't want to talk about it too long. Well, the best clip we have, the clip that's doing the best on our Instagram is we had Francis Foster on the show. He does
mostly people yelling at him.
It's people yelling at him. He does a show called Trigonometry. It's a very popular podcast. And there's a thing where Dan goes, what would be a British hillbilly be? And we're listening, and the guy goes, it's called a chav. It stands for Council, House, and Violent. Yep. But he probably was wrong. That's urban, not hillbilly. That's not rural.
Okay.
You would have thought he tore up a picture of the Pope. It was like Sinead O'Connor in the 90s. Everybody, how many comments are on that thing? 1,000 comments?
Well, it's a lot of it's almost like at 500,000 views on that. Unfortunately, they're not watching the fucking episode. They're just watching that goddamn clip. So maybe watch the whole fucking episode, guys. Because me and Sean aren't mentioned once in those comments. It's like, fuck Francis. And then the next comment, you don't even know it's our show. Really, it's just yelling at Francis.
Your show is just this one clip.
At one point, they're like, why is his upper lip missing? I'm like, Jesus, you guys are brutal.
Good Lord.
Absolutely. People, the internet is just,
It's very brutal.
that's why I don't mind TikTok being gone. But Dan, before we get to UFO, the crux of the UFO topic, which we have an expert here. What'd you say?
Well, we're going to go into some very real stuff.
Okay.
So something that the people in Putnam County, Florida, are talking about is the Barden Booger, which is basically Bigfoot, but what if he's a monkey? Like he's full monkey and he smells really bad.
Okay.
Which I thought Bigfoot already smelled bad too.
Yeah,
So-
isn't that part of the lore?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
And are people saying, is this supposedly a picture of the thing, or this is an artist rendering?
I imagine it could be an artist rendering or a picture. Like,
Well, let's see what it says here.
I think it's.
When you go back to
I
the
think
text, it looks like the boogeyman. Speaking of boogers, tucked away along the tall pines farmlands of Palatka lies an unincorporated community of Barden, which that sounds shady right there.
Very sounds-
Unincorporated. What is that?
That means unincorporated. That community didn't want them.
Right.
There's another community that didn't want them to incorporate.
It's where it sounds like where a bunch of carnies live.
Yeah.
Along County Road 309D. This is a lot of directions how to get there to Barden. The sign, warm hello. I lived here all my life, born and raised, said Barden resident J.J. Pennington. I love our small community. I wouldn't live anywhere else. But there's got to be a big but here. There's got to be something coming. Keep going. With population of 424. Oh, it's 424 people live in this town. This is old men chewing the fat. It's obviously a very, very rural town. And they talk about the summer of 1947. There was an elusive tale of a woman riding her horse through the woods spotted what she thought was a very tall man in a long raincoat. Upon closer inspection, she realized the coat was actually fur and the man was no man. And so this thing's been around for as long as even the Bigfoot thing's been around.
This is what I
if not
find very
longer.
confusing. Karen Moore goes, I see monkeys out here in our woods all the time. And I'm like, wait, what? You do?
The wild monkeys.
There's monkeys just in the woods in Florida? But I've never seen one that's 10 feet tall. I was also just thinking about what you had said with the cats, and I realized Trump just said that about Haitians. I think what happens is whenever there's a new immigrant class, everyone's just like, oh, they're eating our cats.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
It's like, oh, yeah. It's like,
always
no, you don't take care of your cats.
It's always a go-to
You let them
racist thing.
go outside.
It was,
Yeah.
but that was like the thing with Asians, like they dogs.
that's
or
right,
whatever.
yeah, that
It's always been a thing where it's like and you just go to because you're like, I don't understand this. Let me just
Eat cats.
say this thing
Right.
and just out of my ass, whatever it is. This thing that does not look like that's somebody in a monkey costume that colored the eyes red. And we'll show the picture on Instagram in the video, but. It looks like a monkey with dog ears and
freaky.
The reason I
missing
wanted to
teeth.
bring this up with Ryan is like before we go into all of this UAP stuff and the possibility of life in other dimensions or other planets or in dimension in our own planet in the ocean, do you think there's any fire to the smoke of cryptids, or do you think that that's just completely bullshit?
Oh, I absolutely believe in cryptids.
You do?
Yeah, totally.
Seriously?
In
But, like,
Syracuse,
it doesn't
our
seem like there's the same evidence though, right?
there, I always look at it as like aliens are interesting because scientifically they can be proven. Like we're getting to a point where
Yeah.
life elsewhere in the
enough
universe
info.
is
Yeah.
going to converge where finally we're going to know that there's some sort of life out there, whether it's intelligent or just microbial. A lot of people believe it's visited here already, which I'm sure we'll get to.
or that it's been here the entire time.
It's been here, exactly.
Right.
But when it comes to cryptids, like it could easily be, it could be anything. It could be the missing link to something. It could be an endangered species we just haven't seen. I mean, how many new species are we finding? All the
Usually
time.
pretty small, right? Or they're in the ocean or something.
They are. That's a good point. Yeah, there's very few land creatures that we haven't discovered yet. But then there's always that question, like, why have we never found the dead body of a Bigfoot or, a Loch Ness monster creature?
Yeah.
But I do. I choose to believe because I think it's good to know or think that there's stuff out there we haven't discovered yet.
And it's a very big possibility. And actually, it fits into the world of UFO because of what's the ranch?
Skinwalker
Ranch.
Well, that's because of the Skinwalkers, right?
Well, there is sightings of Bigfoots. They think it might be some weird interdimensional, not weird, some interdimensional port where these things come out of. That is, there's space time gets all fucked up there. Whatever happens, and that's why cryptids are either attracted to it or they are. That's where the source of it is, or whatever. Like there's been sightings of Bigfoots multiple times at Skinwalker Ranch.
But I just like okay, and this is where I'm going to be a skeptic because I'm going to be all on board with the UAP stuff. It's just it doesn't seem like there's the same evidence. Like for cryptids, it just seems like somebody being like, "Oh, I saw this crazy thing," opposed to like a fighter pilot being like, "I have this footage of this thing." Well, so it makes me think it's bullshit because it's not the same sort of overwhelming.
But there's okay. So I don't know. Go ahead, Ryan, if you want to.
Oh no, I mean, I completely understand that. There, maybe once in a while, when I've spoken to Bigfoot hunters, like right. I've interviewed them. I've gone out and looked several times, never found anything. But the evidence they always point you to is, oh, look at these branches on the ground. They're broken. They're all stacked up in a pile. Like bullshit, and I'm like, okay, guys, come on.
Somebody just gathered some leaves,
right? Or maybe a footprint or something like that. But the thing I always go to is there was a point, and I don't remember when exactly it happened, but the United States government, like they are now with UFOs, did fund studies to look for Bigfoot. So, I mean, you had the United States government out there with their whatever park rangers actually looking for these things. So if they're actually pumping money into this stuff and looking for it,
something must have piqued their interest.
Something.
Right.
Something.
Yeah.
So the way I feel about like what you just said is this. The same thing, it could go the same trajectory as the UFO things, the UAP things going. A lot of this was anecdotal for how many decades? And then, but there's been, Bigfoots have the same thing. I'm not saying I'm a Bigfoot. The UAP thing to me, ever since that Times article has always been, I'm like, this is legit, right?
Yeah.
The Bigfoot thing, I'm not saying I co-sign on it, but what I'm saying is it has the same kind of line going where there's been so many people that are like, clear as day.
You're
I saw
saying
this
because
thing.
like the UFO stuff started from an oral history, then it's possible
It'll get to that
stuff,
point. Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe not.
Maybe not. It's just. I just feel like to what you said. Like if we would have found a body, but
well, that's part of it.
Well,
so it could be that things are being mistaken. There's tons of videos of they're like that. The bellow is or they hear the sound and it's supposed to be a Bigfoot. And you're like, we don't know that because it's not there in front of the screen. But then you have people who just seem like regular people that were also the people that were also doubted that were like UFO people, like the fire in the sky guy. What was his name?
Travis Walt.
Travis Walt. Like it's like one of these guys where it's like, yeah, they just how many comics have jokes about hey, a redneck in the forest saw the UFO. Same thing happens with Bigfoot. These people are just like kind of regular people. Granted, there's not as much to back it up. Once you got the military angle with the UAP, it kind of changed the ball game for the whole thing.
Well, and also to me, like my other thing is like it's more explainable. Like for instance, if I see like a crazy like deformed guy in the woods, I could be like, okay, well, maybe there's like an incestual family back there. I mean, that happens all the time. And this is actually a human. It just doesn't look like a human. Opposing to like aliens where I'm like, I can't explain that from any earthly explanation. You know what I mean? Yeah, like the alien stuff, I can't, like it's real and I can't explain. I can't say that that's a weather balloon versus this. I can say, oh, maybe that's a sister fucker.
Well, we're going to get into like the nuts and bolts of it. We're going to get into later because of the two things we picked are actually perfect. Because we just talked about anecdotal evidence and one of the most famous things ever, which I wanted Ryan to talk about.
Let's switch seats. Let's do it.
Oh, he's not kidding.
You're going to lead the UFO stuff.
What does that matter?
I don't know.
Why did you just do that?
I thought you were walking out on us.
Oh, shame on him for trying to do something different.
God forbid.
No. What I'm just trying to say is that anecdotally, one of the most famous cases ever. Dan, you ever heard? Because Dan's such a new recruit to this.
Yeah,
he was into it, but now he's like he's over the line here.
Okay.
And I just had a fight with my wife today, so I'm expecting the divorce to.
Oh, over UFOs? Please tell me it was about UFOs.
That'd be great if that was. It was just
like once the further you get into UFOs, the farther you get away from your wife.
Well, because I have a bit where I talk about how UFOs are real and I describe the Tic Tac thing, but I get more and more berserk. It's not usually close with it, and at the end I go, "What I'm trying to say is divorce is really hard." Because I got divorced. That's what he's referring to. But anyway, no, but if you could just give us a breakdown, because you're better at doing this than I am. I feel whenever I try to talk about UFOs, I get so jumbled. So you haven't heard about this case, and it's famous, and it's been time and time. It's been time tested. The stories haven't changed. The people were just regular people in Boston. Interracial couple in Boston. It's the Betty and Barney Hill sighting. And if you could just give us information,
absolutely.
A breakdown of it,
It's
so people know it.
A complex, convoluted case. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. 1961. Up near in the New England area. This couple were, I think they went out to dinner or something, and they were heading home. They're on, of course, like a dark, lonely road. And all of a sudden, Betty and Barney Hill were their names. I should add that. Interracial couple back in the 60s.
61, which is crazy. Yeah, not crazy, but
right.
Reason they came forward.
Especially with this story.
Yeah.
And, sort of that prototypical, they see lights in the sky. It's getting closer. It's getting brighter. Turns out to be a circular, oval-shaped craft that just descends and lands right in front of their car. And they don't know what to do. Like, they don't know, is this like a helicopter coming in for an emergency landing? Like, what is going on here? And all of a sudden, they're in the car and they become paralyzed. They can't move.
Okay.
They can't, all they can do is like, their eyes are just darting back and forth. Like, what is happening? And
because I've heard about this paralysis before, is it just kind of like a numbing, or like, how does that work?
From what I can gather, I mean, I've interviewed at this point hundreds of people who've claimed to have been abducted by aliens. And every story has its own sort of makeup. But one of the patterns I found across the board is this paralysis, whether they are, in a lot of people,
done to them by some sort of force.
Some sort of unseen force. A lot of people attribute it to sleep paralysis, but in a case like this, they weren't
driving.
They're in the middle of the road.
Yeah, of course.
Can't move, nothing. And these creatures get out of the spaceship, I guess we could call it, and approach their car and just drag them out of the car. Like, no floating them out, nothing like, super magical about it. They just grabbed him by the arms and dragged.
Do these look like the traditional grays?
Yes. However, that term never had been spoken before. This idea of the prototypical gray with the big head, black eyes, none of that was known at the time. Nothing. It had never really been spoken of.
It's early on. Yeah.
So it physically just grabbed them out of the car.
Dragged them out.
And to give you a framework, this is, sorry to interrupt you, but this is before Roswell became Roswell. This is before that happened. So Roswell, right? I don't know what year. Roswell got picked up again later, way after it happened, right?
That's a good point. Yeah. Roswell happened in 1947.
There's no frame of reference with this. This just happened to these people. So I'm sorry, continue.
Not at all. No. Roswell crash, which a lot of people know happened in 1947. However, like you said, the actual story didn't come out till, I don't know, the late 70s.
Late 70s.
Yeah, it had been covered up very well. But with this Betty and Barney Hill thing, they alleged, after having been put under hypnotic regression, that they basically were kidnapped by what they believed were aliens. They were up on a craft. They were experimented on.
Do they know what the experiments were? What do they involve?
It got pretty dark from what I can remember.
Because I vaguely remember this, and there was like some sexual stuff, right? Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I kind of vaguely remember that.
Which, a lot of people have come forward since and claimed the same things. You look at Whitley Strieber.
And this was, they like extracted semen from him? What was the thing?
Apparently. Yeah. In a lot of these cases, this one included, there have been rumors, or I guess anecdotal testimony that ova were taken from women, sperm were taken from men, and a lot of people think that some sort of weird hybridization thing was going on between their race and the humans, and this is why they were kidnapping people. Right. I mean, again, this is all...
But that actually goes back to something you were saying with, you had talked about the missing link theory, and that there is a theory that essentially aliens were the missing link, that them breeding with some sort of primate led to us.
So I forget where it was. Might have been on the podcast, but there was a woman who wrote a book about how the human race surviving couldn't have been done without some kind of intervention from something. Because there was a story in the book about there was this what we needed for crops, like, whey or wheat, whatever it was, had these 2 seeds that had to germinate to make what was mostly like at one point in history was like what most humans were eating, were on opposite ends of the planet, and somehow they got to a point where they germinated and crops flourished and the human race flourished. So her theory is like somebody moved that along,
sped up the process,
the process, or and if you're to believe what's going on now, and we'll get into that, like this obviously, or if you hear the Jimmy Carter story where everything's being controlled anyway, it's like or simulation, whatever you want to call it. It's very believable that, hey, we're doing this, like, hey, well, this is the experiment, but we're kind of helping you along here a little bit, whatever.
And were these abductees, were there any long-term physical effects from this?
Oh yeah, I mean,
so there was a night. Was there nightmares? It was just the regression, right?
A lot of it is psychological trauma. Obviously, it's like a form of PTSD for a lot of these people. But there are other cases
of radiation poisoning. I've read.
Yeah, stuff like that.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Implants in their bodies that were found of these strange little things that couldn't be explained. Marks, scoop marks, they call them, where they take skin from you. It's crazy.
And the interesting thing about Betty and Barney Hill is that what accompanied the case is there's audio of them being interviewed under regression about what happened to them, and they've played it for how many people, hundreds of people, like that would be professionals, like psychological professionals. They're like, oh, this is not made up. This is completely on the level. That this guy Barney apparently was a fairly serious guy, like not a regular guy, and he is. If you hear the audio, he's terrified in the audio. Like he's screaming. He's recounting what's happening. He's telling what they're doing. So it's like when you hear stuff like that, and it's 1961, and it's an interracial couple, and you hear everything. I don't see that. I
don't. Especially if you're an interracial couple, the last thing you want is more
publicity.
attention.
You can get killed.
Yeah, more attention.
And what I always think of in these cases, up until even now, even when it comes to these whistleblowers, is motive. I always think motive. I always think when it came to even before aggression, when it came to Fravor, I'm like, there's no motive. Like, so, and when it came to Elizondo, there's no Lou Elizondo, who wrote the book.
No, I read Eminent.
Right? Yeah, Eminent. So you're telling me, and if you hear the book, this guy didn't have a set plan. I'm going to come out and lie about this, and then I'm going to have a multi-million-dollar book deal. No, the guy was living in an RV with his family because To the Stars didn't work out. Like, doesn't seem like a great plan for somebody who's been so kind of stable for how much 30, 40 years.
A lot of these people, Elizondo included.
Right.
I've had the pleasure of meeting him several times now.
Yeah.
Him and his entire family.
He's completely
straight shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no reason not to believe this man. But a lot of these people, there's nothing to gain from this. Maybe once in a while a book comes out that makes some money on the topic. But overall, like even today, where UFOs have been accepted, it's still stigmatic.
I think that there is, to your point, there is the evidence of somebody who made money off it, and that was Whitney Stryver with
he did.
Wait, that wasn't real. Like, for the most part, people come. Maybe for the most part, it seems like that did not happen, the Whitney Stryver thing, and that was like, hey, I need to sell some fucking books.
It's very possible, but but it's one of those things where it's like, but he was describing things that happened before to other people. Yeah, maybe. I think that's going to happen no matter what.
You could have probably used some of those stories.
There's tons of cases. Like, there's a guy named Richard Doty who was a disinformation agent for years, and then finally was like, this is what I did for the government. I told people, I would give people, it was 60% real stuff and then 40%. That could be Whitley Stryver. It could be that, hey, he was told this and then he ran off with a book, or hey, this one thing happened to him, but he bullshitted about another part. You know what I'm saying?
I think he made up his experience, but the stuff I think he took that stuff from real stuff.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because, like, he's been, but you're bringing up, both of you guys are bringing up the hypnosis. I actually went through hypnosis on Saturday for like 4 hours, and it does work.
Really?
Yeah, for my fear of flying. It got really bad. Well,
did it help?
It did.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a much better flight.
You got to fly UFO now. You got to go back.
You got to go back. No, it did help.
That's how they get you.
Basically, I had started drinking again, so I was not afraid of flights. But then when I quit again, like 16 months ago, the fear came back really intensely. So, and now with my job, I have to fucking travel every week. So I went to. But yeah, that stuff does work. It's legit.
It's
That's my point.
A lot of people have come to me and said, yeah, I went under hypnotic regression and all these memories came back up and it triggered something.
Yeah.
And who am I to not believe them? Like, I wasn't there when it happened. That's what I tell people. I've interviewed hundreds of thousands of people at this point.
Right.
Do I believe everyone? No. Are some of them making it up? Of course they are.
Of course.
Are some of them fantasy prone? Yeah, but for every one of them, there's someone like a Lou Elizondo or a Travis Walton
or a Grush. But then there's other, like one of the big ones that I'll say, and I think you are along the same lines, but you're in that world, so you have to like ride the line a little bit. So that just when this new whistleblower was coming out, everybody was freaking out about this what this guy was going to say or whatever it was, and there was like a build up to it,
and
right?
this guy's name again is
Jake. What is it again?
Jacob Barber.
Jacob Barber.
He was just on something, right? He was
he
part
just
of
came
Crash
up.
Retrieval.
Correct.
Yes.
That's the newest one. That's the newest one.
Yeah.
Yep. A couple days ago.
See, I got a little
so
bit.
If Fravor had an impeccable reputation, this guy is beyond 10,000 times beyond. Like this guy. There's nobody that's saying this guy's a bullshitter, an unserious person, anything like that. This guy's
he's saying
the real
he's part
deal.
of the retrieval program.
He's saying that he was literally part of the retrieval program.
Can you guys explain to me what a and our listeners like what a retrieval program is?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you looked at the testimony of David Grush, who came forward last year at some point in front of Congress, mind you.
No, I remember. I saw that actually live. I was open.
Who didn't want to put them under oath, and they insisted on it.
Yes,
which is a weird thing to me. I thought everybody who goes in front of Congress just goes under oath.
Me too. Yeah, I don't know how that works, but he testified that I interviewed over 40 individuals who claimed to have worked on UFO crash retrieval projects. You look at like Roswell, the most famous UFO crash of all time. Someone's got to retrieve that, recover it, bring it somewhere. And he says he interviewed these dudes who have been doing this. A legacy program that's been going on for decades that gets moved around so that the government never really knows who's doing it, where the stuff is located, no oversight.
And it's also portions, it's members of other groups that are already within the government.
Correct.
So JSOC was one, right?
Yep.
JSOC was one. And then this guy Barber was part of another one that was, I forget the name of it, but he just came out. But so it's so compartmentalized. And also their duties are compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. So you might be on the helicopter pulling this thing, and the guys on the ground are they're not connected with the guy in the helicopter pulling it.
Right. No, that's something
they're like, you hook the thing on, he's going to pull it up, and nobody talks about it.
And that's how you keep secrets.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, with this retrieval program, is it similar, like, when there's a crash, like you would with a state trooper? Do they cordon off a section of land? Like, what do they have specific instruments they start out with, test for uranium and radiation?
So that's why this one's so interesting, because the program that he was involved with claimed to have the ability to call on these things to come down. So
this
is where it got
weird.
Really.
Yeah.
This is where it got really,
he could call people. Wait, he can summon them.
Apparently.
Well, yeah.
What? How the fuck does that work?
Well, he gets in their DMs.
You got to be sly.
All you do is go, you up.
Yeah, you up.
There's an app for everything. I mean, come
Just
on.
pointing to your open butthole for the probe. I'm ready. Been lonely for a long time. So tell me how this works.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, Grush comes forward, says that these retrieval programs exist. Now, this guy comes forward a couple days ago. Jake Barber says he was one of the people who worked on one of these programs.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, we're talking like they most of the time were recovering conventional aircraft, military planes that went down, helicopters that went down, cargo that may have dropped to the ground. They were the ones to retrieve it. But there were several instances, he says, throughout his career where he was sent out to recover things and they were never told what it was. That could be for good reason, national security. Maybe it was a nuke that went rogue or something. I don't know. But there were these times where, and he the big one he brought up during this interview recently was an egg, literally an egg. Which
tracks.
Yeah.
So there's multiple incursions.
Is that the aircraft, or is that something that was in the aircraft?
He believes that it was the craft itself, just an egg-shaped thing, no appendages, no signs of propulsion. Did it look like an egg, or was it metallic looking?
No, it looked like an egg, a white egg.
A white egg.
And the thing that I think of, the minute I found out about, or heard about it, the thing I thought of was, what's his name? Lonnie from Zamora. Remember I talked about it on the podcast, the guy in New Mexico, the cop who was like more serious, like just an old cop from.
And I saw that in Unacknowledged or one of those. Yeah.
So what he this is the same exact thing that he described seeing.
It tracks.
And it had markings on the side, and he saw beings.
Yeah.
What were the markings? Now I've heard the markings are some
He
of them
didn't
are
mention
Egyptian.
markings.
They're hieroglyphics.
That's what they equate them to.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's, it doesn't mean literal hieroglyphics, right? I think it just means that's what they resembled. And
Yeah.
That was the only, that was the frame of
Which
reference.
gives credence to the ancient aliens.
That's
idea.
bringing it back. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that does.
Yeah, it's so interesting. But back to the summoning thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
sorry, yeah.
this guy is not only is he saying that he recovered craft that he believes was extraterrestrial, but the Pentagon had a task force that studied UFOs. They confirmed to him that what he was recovering that day was extraterrestrial.
Right.
Well, excuse me, was non-human. So then that's when you get into semantics. They're like, well, what do you mean non-human? Alien? And sometimes they're like, not necessarily. Like, well, what do you mean?
And what they mean probably is interdimensional or something that's here that's been here the whole time that nobody knows.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good starting out point too. A question that I have now, what I've heard from my research is that these could be either interdimensional, they could be within the ocean, and that we don't know that they're just a species that's living concurrently with us.
Like the abyss.
They could be extraterrestrial from another planet. That's what that would say. And then the fourth thing, there's actually a fifth. The fourth would be that there's some sort of, they're angelic or demonic. It's a religious aspect.
Which is the theory of a lot of...
And then the fifth thing, which actually seems the craziest out of all of it, it's all bullshit and it's our government. Am I missing one out of those five?
No, well, there's the Tom DeLonge one, which I kind of don't even get. It's mixed between... It mixed between something here and interdimensional, right? He uses the phrase "gods" with a small g. So what he's
That's what I meant by interdimensional.
Yeah,
Okay.
but with the ability to be in our dimension simultaneously, I don't get it fully. I don't think it's ever been really.
And then there's time travelers too. It's us, but in the future.
that's the other
That was the one I was. That's my favorite theory, actually.
Right.
Is the time traveler thing.
Well,
yeah.
who's you might have had him on your show. The guy he wrote a book about it, where he said if biologically we keep going the way we're going because of what we do as humans, we might end up looking like a gray because you won't need if it's say it's a million years from now, you're not going to need all this stuff.
Well, here's another question that I have in regards to that. Is there a chance that like this gray appearance, right? The big head, the big eyes, could this be? Because I was thinking about like, we can't think about other life in terms of it being corporal like us. Is it possibility that that's just their idea of a human disguise, and in actuality that underneath it they're just matter or something like that?
Yes.
Like so we actually see that in some of the Marvel movies where you think like they turn out to be tentacle things. They look like humans, but they had that in fucking Galaxy Quest, same thing.
Yeah.
But like, could that just be their costumes for us?
Yes, and that right. So
There's a concept that UFO researchers have sort of termed screen memory. And this is where if aliens are abducting humans or trying to commune with them in some way, that they will take a form that they think is relative enough to a human that we won't be overwhelmed. A lot of people say in religion, like if you actually heard like the voice of God or an angel, your head would explode,
Right.
something like that.
Right.
Same with aliens.
Or they show like how God is described in the Bible, and it's terrifying.
It's freaky as
It's
hell.
freaky as hell.
And
you
that
see a
could
picture
be
of it.
with these aliens too. You look at the movie Arrival, like those big,
yeah,
octopod things or whatever they call them,
like squid
heptapods.
type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but they apparently have the technology or they're able to mess with our whatever
It's
perception
consciousness based. Yeah.
enough to make them look somewhat human. So it's interesting.
And then so what also fits into that is the theory. Jacques Vallée, who was the guy who was he was the guy who advised on Close Encounters, but he's been around forever and he's tested materials. But his big theory was this thing has been the same phenomenon for hundreds of years, but whatever's going on in human history at the time, that's what it presents itself as. So that's why for the past 70 years they've been seeing it as tech, because it's the industrial to the technological age. But back in the day, you'd see fairies and demons, and they would write things about like, hey, we saw a fairy, we saw a gnome, we saw this, because back then they didn't have the know-how of what tech would be. So in their world, it was like, oh, I've heard about these things or something. It's like that. So it's been the same thing, and whatever this thing is, you want to call it God, you call it whatever you want to call it. It's been presenting itself as different things over the years.
Yeah.
Well, that's also
Which is another theory.
Yeah, I mean, okay, well then I guess the big question for both of you guys, which I think like more passive casuals like myself are going to ask. It seems like it ends up, especially at the end of that book, Eminent, which I highly recommend. Sean recommended me that like you have to get to the final debate, which is are they here? Are they benevolent? Are they here because they're adversarial, which is what it seems like where that guy's leaning a little bit, or they're neutral and they're just here studying us. I for sure haven't really seen examples of the adversarial or really the benevolent.
There
it just
has
seems
been.
to me.
There's a case, if you can.
Okay.
The one. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but
I want to know. I don't.
The Brazilian. Is it Brazilian?
Yep.
And it's in the newest NAP thing.
There's several cases out of South America where apparently Colores is actually a big one where UFOs shot at people, like straight up shot laser beams, and it physically injured people.
Really?
There's other cases, what
would they be burned? Like what was the
burned, radiation.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I always come to is I don't necessarily think they're adversarial in the sense that they're here to harm us, but just by proxy, their technology alone could harm us without them even knowing. It's interesting. A lot of these cases have radiation involved with them.
Which is Rendlesham is the one.
That's the big one.
Well, my thing is if it was really adversarial from like the reports and especially the Tic Tac video, like they would have done it already. Like we would all be wiped out. Just because of how far these advancements are.
In the Elizondo book, and he's military based, so he's like, you could make the argument that it's all recon.
Yeah.
It's all recon. And then there's another theory that kind of fits into that Corbell calls bullshit is that what we're going to be told in America is that there's a ship that's on its way here that gets here in 2036 so you can kind of probably fit the recon into that if you really want to. But
wait, tell me about the ship in 202036. That's the first time I've heard of it.
It's been a story that's been going around for
I want to hear about it.
Apparently, there's a ship that's been making its way here, and it's been making its way here for a very long time. Like they clearly haven't mastered wormholes or whatever to get here yet. But Corbell has.
How big is this fucking ship?
Apparently massive.
I think it's like mothership style.
We're talking like mothership.
Independence Day thing,
But
it's coming toward where did they see this? How do they? What's going on?
Well, no. Here's the thing. That's kind of what we're saying.
Yeah.
So all this stuff that's going on. So I actually do think what's going on with Grush and Jake and Barber is actual slow. I'm at the point. I'm like, it's slow disclosure. I think it's just slow disclosure, and they're going to end up telling people, hey, the things that you think that we have had, like, hey, this is real. But they're going to give you. Basically, what they're doing is admitting to jaywalking so they can cover up the murder. Like they're gonna, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like they're gonna do a thing where they go, yeah. Or if you look over here, this is yes. Sorry, we lied to you. We put all this UFO stuff under nuclear secrets for years, and that's the way we got away with it, which is literally what I think happened. That's why they're able to. That's why you can't get schematics for nuclear bomb, right? They put all the UFO files under that act so that nobody can find it. It's immune from FOIA, right?
Yeah.
So they go, look over here. Yes, we've had this. We retrieved a couple of these craft. We'll admit to whatever we have to, but we do have more information. And then everybody will be placated. Once they hear that, I think half the country or half the world won't even believe it anyway, and then they'll just go on doing their thing. And
what I think has been so
fighting for TikTok
and I think the reason we're seeing more whistleblowers now is I remember watching that hearing in 2023 and being blown away. And I think I was opening for Soder. I think maybe I don't know where the fuck I was, but like that night I remember I went to the club and I was like, oh my God, guys, you wouldn't believe. Did you guys watch this? And no one gave a fuck.
Yeah.
No one gave a fuck. It was like to the point of where I'm like, I think they're having more people come out because they're like, well, what's the thing that's gonna get people fucking interested?
Right.
Well, the UFO people are because they're like, we're pushing, and there's headway right from all the guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, when that New York Times article came out in 2017,
blew it wide open.
That was my Christmas. Like I've been waiting for something like this. I spent my whole life studying this stuff.
But then there's a lot of, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Especially from reading that book, Eminent, there seems to be a lot of frustration within the UAP community that the headline wasn't "We're Not Alone." That like they obfuscated
and from the authors of the article, and from Leslie Kane and Ralph, whatever his name is, Blumenthal. Yes, they said but to me, that's why I believe it even more because that's how much they vet those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They vetted the shit out of it. It took a year for them to get it published.
It took over a year to get it to the place where they felt the New York Times could cover it. And it came out. It was explosive. It was big for a little while, but like you said, after that, everyone went on with their lives. These whistleblowers come out. Cool. It's big for a couple days. Then back to TikTok, back to going to
What
my
do you
job.
think it's going to take? Like an actual alien?
I think it will never be 100% of people 100% of the time. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you're going to, even when, if you had, say you had a HD video, which I thought was going to be this Jake Barber thing, but supposedly there's other stuff coming out, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
There's another thing they say 2027, some event is happening. That,
Okay, yes.
That'll make it. That'll make
let's
it.
set that
well,
back because all I've heard is 2027 in regards to the UFO
Right.
community. Tell me what 2027 means to you guys.
So I was talking to a buddy of mine about it. What does it mean to you, Ron? Because you first. What would be your hypothesis?
My hypothesis?
Yeah.
Well, some background. Where did this come from? First off, before you give your take.
It was part of the Schellenberger documentary, wasn't it? Or no, maybe it wasn't.
I don't know. And that's the problem in the UFO field. And it's frustrating because we're told different dates all the time. Disclosure's coming now. It's coming tomorrow. It's coming 3 years from now. The craft is going to land. The government's going to come forward. And every time something messes it up,
Right.
you know, and that's why it's so frustrating. And that's why you have to take every single one of these claims with a grain of salt. Yeah. You know, even these whistleblowers coming out right now. Yeah, of course. Like they are highly credentialed. They have a lot to lose by coming forward. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to believe them wholesale.
But 2027, that's something I've heard a
Well,
few
no,
times.
I've heard it a lot.
Elizondo is quoted. He's quoted as saying he goes, "You're not going to be able to deny it. It's something that's going to be so obvious they can't hide it." And I don't know what it would be. The only my friend Shane, they used to have a podcast. It was a paranormal podcast, and a really funny comic from Raleigh. He was like, we were talking about one time on the phone when the Elizondo interviews were coming out from the book, and he was like, it's something environmental that like an Antarctic, like the ice melts in Antarctica and they can't
and you'll be able to see a ship.
They'll be able to see a ship or something. That's what that was.
I mean,
his
that
guess.
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
What else could it be? And then you're going to need HD video of that ship to show the news, and you're still going to have people that will go, "It's AI, it's video." It's going to happen no matter what. We're not at a place where
That's the other thing. Yeah.
it's just not going to happen. But really quick before we go, because Dan has to go to a show. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm sorry to keep checking my phone, but
Not at all.
Yeah, we got 15. We got 15.
you sure?
Yeah.
All right.
I told him I could
Are
be
you
a
good on
little
time?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
We could talk this stuff for.
I know. It's the best.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, I just need like 5 minutes, so it's fine.
Okay,
Like
cool.
10 minutes so we can talk about booking. Yeah.
So, what you call it? The other thing I wanted to mention, because it ties into the Jake Barber situation, when you talked about physical effects, and like you said, by proxy, these things become malevolent just by accident because of what they're built of. The way it seems from time and time again, the more info you get about them, is the amount of power that's needed to power these things is detrimental to humans, our casing, whatever it is. And another famous suburban story, it's in England, it's on a military base, but suburban, is Rendlesham Forest, which is famous. And there's a reason it's been famous for a while. The people involved have been documented over the years. It was in the 80s, was it not?
1980.
In 1980.
Yeah.
And could you just tell us what happened there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you're better at this than I am.
Not at all, man. Like, again, this is my life.
Yeah.
If I don't know these things, there's a problem.
There's a problem.
I'm not the one you want to have on the show. 1980, Cold War, tensions were high at the time. The U.S. they were over in England on these two joint RAF, USAF military bases called Bentwaters and Woodbridge. And in between these two bases was a forest called Rendlesham Forest. It's got a lot of history behind it in England, supposedly like very supernatural and a magical forest, which you would expect in somewhere like England.
Yeah.
But what happened was one night...
Teeth fixed in the forest.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was Christmas Day of all times. Radar at the base caught something coming towards the base, and they're like, "Buckle up, guys!" Like,
And I'm sorry, what year was this?
This was 1980.
Okay.
And they're like, "Oh God, what? Like Cold War? What's coming at the base? We don't know what this is. It's coming at high speed. It's huge. What is going on?" They start tracking it on radar. They contact the base commander of the base, one of the bases at the time. Said, "Yo, get your guys out there, as many as you can. We need to go
Something's
see
up.
what's going on.
Yeah.
And whatever that thing was that they tracked on radar landed in that forest. So they brought out 60 military personnel, British and U.S., and they went out in the woods and they claimed, and there's audio of this, the base commander had a recorder and he was recording in real time what was happening. And you can listen to this, just Google it, Rendlesham UFO, whatever. And you can hear him explaining and describing what was going on. And they describe him amongst the other military personnel, an elliptical craft of some sort that landed.
This being is in an elliptical craft.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it landed in the middle of the woods. And they sent a couple guys up to it and said, "No, you go. You go see what this is." Yeah, I'm the base commander. I'm not. I don't think so.
Hazing. Yeah.
And one of them touched the craft, and said a bunch of weird stuff happened. He got like this weird download in his brain of like all these weird binary codes, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, and that guy who touched that craft, he had major health issues after he left the service. And he said, yeah, it's because I touched a fucking UFO.
What were the health
back in
issues?
1980. Radiation issues. He had some sort of heart thing that just, had been festering since this event.
And chronic. It was chronic. Like to this, it comes to this day. That's why I brought it up. Yeah.
But what happened was he went to the VA to try to get help with it, and they were like, "Nah, man, sorry. Like we don't even see that you were in the service. Your files got wiped." And he's like, "What?" So he ended up going to Congress and telling them about this, and
to get fucking benefits.
To save his life.
Yeah.
Right.
Eventually they did.
And
they
of all
gave him the
people,
money.
who helped him?
It was
John McCain.
John McCain, of all people.
Oh, that's crazy.
Which I'm not going to say of all people. He seemed like a nice guy.
Yeah, he seemed fun.
Yeah.
He was, and
Yeah.
So what happened?
saved his life.
What happened as far as they went up to this? What happened when they went up to the ship? Did the thing come out? Was there any communication?
It ends up going, and then just like most of them, goes and then hovers and then took off.
Just
right?
darted off.
And there was another detail where apparently I think it was this one, or it was a second. Was there a second object later in the night or something like that, or something where something was giving off like dropping some kind of molten material.
3 nights. This stuff
3
was
nights of
going
this
on.
stuff. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So and one of them was dripping something from the actual craft.
Yeah.
Right? It was something. Yeah.
Just tons of different stuff.
Do they
3
have any idea
consecutive
what that
nights.
substance was?
I don't
No.
think so. I think it might have made some sort of effect or mark in the forest itself, but they have information about. But they could see it when it was happening, but they don't know what it was.
Crazy.
But the reason why it fits into now with Barber is because Barber also had effects when he was retrieving. He had health effects after he retrieved the egg. Same kind of deal. Anything would be done from radiation, right?
Did he have the thing where he started like downloading?
He downloaded. It had an effect on him. He said he had.
What's it? Codes?
I know
Like,
he
what
had
does
an
see?
overwhelming feeling of happiness and sadness at the same time.
Yep.
He said something was possessing him at the moment. This is why I buy into this stuff. These aren't. It's not some. We're not a Burning Man here. Like you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Like it's not. This is why this guy's
The
military.
Barden Booger may be bullshit, but this is not bullshit.
This is for real. But so he said I had it was while we're retrieving it, I was close enough to it where something from that craft I was having an experience with it, and he's like, it was beautiful. It was the most beautiful thing to happen to me. It changed my life. I think about it every day. It's like this.
Well, it sounds like a
emotional reaction.
psychedelics almost. That's
Almost,
little
yeah,
bit.
it probably fits into that world. So the other thing was another reason to believe this stuff is real. The Rendlesham Forest patient, the guy it affected, I don't even know his name.
John Burroughs.
John. Okay, when he got that, basically the government doesn't admit these things are real, but through John McCain, he ended up getting medical treatment for effects of something that they're saying doesn't exist.
of course.
There is a document now that says this man received benefits because of a UFO event that took place in 1980.
Yeah.
The first ever military document to say someone was directly
Can you send me
physically
a
affected
YouTube
by
video
UFO.
on this incident?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I have a question. You guys, almost every single being you've talked about, they're communicating telepathically. Has there ever been reports of them like actually just talking and it's not from their their head, or like, because my question is, could these be different sort of societies, different civilizations?
That's another theory.
You know,
if you really get down to that point, that's when you have Greys, and then you have the
reptilians and all that shit.
What's the tall blonde
Nordics.
ones? The Nordics, and then you have a bunch of other ones. Yeah, whatever it is. And so I don't know about that. Like,
that's what Elon Musk is hoping. He's hoping all the Nordics come in. Oh, I was giving the Nordic salute.
Totally.
It was the Nordic salute. Nice try, Elon.
My alien friends, the Nordic. That's how they do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was giving my heart to the Nordics.
Yeah.
It means love and light where I'm from.
But so that's another theory. But then you have to get to that point with that. So one of the things that did it for me, and I think I'm on board at this point because of all the stuff that comes out about this, I'm believing it more and more. One of my favorite guys is James Fox. I think James Fox seems very non-bullshit to me. Seems like a pretty real guy. You had him on your show.
Yeah, I hiked the woods of Scotland with James Fox maybe last year to find the site of a famous UFO photo that they never knew where the location was of where this photo was taken. And we found it.
Is it the one, the chefs, the guys, the two guys?
Yep, the two chefs in
I showed you this photo.
Calvine, Scotland.
It's like a hexagonal, it's next to a plane. It's what's the Calvert
Calvine, Scotland.
And it was supposedly it was in some guy's desk for 30 years. They said that they went to the cops or to the military, or
the RAF sent out a guy to interview these two guys who said they took a photo of a UFO. And he interviewed these two guys, said they were straight shooters, and they provided him with the photo of this UFO.
Let's show Dan. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. Pat, can you bring up Calvert UFO photo? It'll come right up. It's pretty. It's
clear as day.
It's clear as day. And if it's not that, you have to see what it is. Anyway, so then these guys, but then nothing happened.
So that's the photo.
There it is right there on the bottom left right there.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's very clear. It looks exactly like what everyone describes as a flying saucer.
And this photo has not been debunked.
Not only that, there's a Harrier jet following.
Right. So you're seeing a size difference there. Like, can you picture? Look at how much difference in size that is. So that's supposed to be.
Yeah, but I don't know. Are they next to each other? Because I don't know.
That's a good point.
As far as
the UFO could be closer,
But the fact is, like, this photo was just discovered,
right?
Like last year when that RAF officer said, "Oh yeah, I forgot I had this photo in my desk. Does anyone want to see this?" Like, dude, we've been looking for this mythical photo for like 40 plus years.
It was always an urban legend. Urban legend about this photo, right?
Because now it's real, and no one knew where it was taken. So James and I went to Calvine. We interviewed the RAF officer who interviewed these guys. He brought us
to the spot
where he said the chef said they took this photo.
No way.
And we believe that we found the exact location where. A lot of people argue that this is just an island and a boat in water, and that there's a reflection. That's the bottom half of the diamond, and that the Harrier jet's a dude in a boat. We went to the site where the photo was taken. We compared it. There's no water within 100 miles.
It's the spot. Can you pull back again? Because I want to see what's on the border of it. Because that to me, I don't.
We found the fence.
That's like water? The cover of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska.
A little bit.
I mean, this is all so fascinating. Another question that I have for you guys is, I think you had talked about this, Bob Lazar, when he was doing some of his rocket propulsion stuff out in the desert near Area 51.
Well, he was supposedly working for them at S4, and
S4,
and then he left because he was supposedly afraid for his life. But then he brought his friends out there, and that's why he thought he'd get in trouble.
Well, the question that I had, the anecdote that comes up is that he noticed a giant book of religion in the middle of the lab, and then he walked up to it, and a general was basically like, "Fucking back off." So I don't know. Is that what happened?
That's interesting.
Well, no, I know about the book.
Well, I
know about the binder.
But I guess this is a bigger question of like, what are the religious connections with this phenomenon?
Yeah,
that would be my question.
So for me, I do see a part of the whole UFO mythos as religion. It's a belief system for people.
Yeah.
I don't really have that luxury of belief or disbelief. I saw a UFO when I was a kid.
Right. I that,
yeah, it's a long story.
I would love to hear that story after this. If you could tell that story,
absolutely.
That would be great. We should end on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I saw it. I believe it, but I don't expect everyone else to believe it if they haven't seen it. But a lot of people take this stuff. I take it very seriously. But I can also, come on a show like yours and make light of the ridiculous nature of all of this UFO phenomenon.
Because some of it probably is, like some of it is. But then the more that you're getting into these weeds, like these serious weeds, or whatever you want to call them, as far as like this disclosure, like we're speaking of, it's like it just seems more and more believable. At least sections of the phenomenon.
Well, it just seems it's so much different because like with the satanic panic thing, there were a couple real things, but most of it was bullshit. And this seems like the opposite, where it's like a lot of it's real, and there's a couple bullshit things, but So what was your experience, man?
95. I was in upstate New York.
How old were you?
I would have been 12 at the time, and I was with my dad, and we were up in the Alexandria Bay area. I don't know if you're familiar at all with up there.
No,
not much.
It's right off the St. Lawrence River up there, kind of near Syracuse. And I was fishing off a dock. We were staying at like a motel situation. They had a dock. I was fishing, and my dad was
just
with
a
me.
story about how his mom kicked the dad out of the house. The dad's like, "We're gonna go fishing. Come on."
And you're not too you're not too far off. And he went in to watch a Yankees game, my dad, and I stayed out and kept fishing. And it started getting dark, so I reeled my line in, and I'm looking in the water, and I see 3 white lights in like a perfect triangle in the water.
Like,
what the heck is that? So I like get down, I bend down.
How far from you?
I'd say, maybe 30 feet out from the dock.
Yeah, which is nothing.
Yeah,
you're seeing it on the reflection of the water.
Yes. Okay. So I thought something was in the water. It was not. It was a reflection. So I look up, and that's when I saw one of those black triangles.
Like the TRB.
TR3B situation.
Yeah.
3 white lights in a perfect triangle, weird red light in the middle of it. And it was, I couldn't see like machinery. So I don't know for sure if this is like a solid craft, but I do remember, memory's faulty. I was 12, but I do distinctly remember that I couldn't see the stars or anything behind
it blocked
that
out the
triangle.
stars. Yeah.
It blocked everything out. So I assumed it was a craft of some sort. I yelled to my dad. I'm like, Dad, 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 Dad. He thought I fell in the water. So he comes outside, and he actually saw it with me. Like I had another witness see this triangle with me.
What did your dad say to you?
We stared up at this thing as it was coasting over the river, the St. Lawrence River.
Which, once again, water.
Completely silent. Not a single sound from whatever. The only thing my dad and I could hear was the water like hitting the dock. It was the quietest moment I've ever had in my entire life, watching this triangle just go over the water, and then it disappeared off into the distance.
Where it took off, right? Yeah, it just
took off. St. Lawrence River, and then on the other side was Canada, so it became their problem.
Yeah. But was there a way? Did your dad more than you? Because I know you're 12, and I wouldn't be able to assess this. But did he have ever a guess on how big the actual object was?
I remember at the time looking up at him, and he was speechless. He didn't say anything.
Right.
We just stared at it. And after that night, he never talked about it again.
Okay.
I don't think, and it not like oh my God, like my life changed. I don't ever want to think about this again. I don't think he put as much importance into it as I did. I became obsessed after that.
Of course.
I was terrified of whatever it was. And I was terrified that my dad couldn't tell me what it was. He wasn't like, dude, that's a blimp or it was a plane. No, he just looked up, saw it, shrugged his shoulders, went back in, and finished watching the Yankees.
Wow, that's fucking hilarious.
And
that's the real American reaction.
Yeah, right.
Also a real Yankees fan.
And exactly. Yeah, that's one thing we don't agree on.
And then later on, and later on, you guys ever talked about it later on?
New York Times article came out 2017. I was living here at the time in Queens, and I went home to visit my dad. We went out to a bar. And he asked me, what's going on with that New York Times stuff? I'm like, the government, the Pentagon is saying that they are investigating UFOs and that they're real. There's a million questions after that.
See, Dad, I didn't waste my fucking life.
Exactly. It was basically that conversation. And he's like, dude.
Something to this.
He's like, I really respect what you're doing, and like this is real. I believe you now. I'm like, thanks, Dad. Yeah, I didn't waste. I didn't quit. Playing baseball to become a ufologist for nothing.
Yeah, right.
And I just remember that was the first time in over like 20 years that we brought up that event that happened in 95.
Wow.
And we hashed it out. We still don't know what it was, where it came from. But
you guys the same recollection.
Totally.
It's totally the same thing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, these things, a lot of people see these things. Dude, thank you so much.
You so
my
much.
pleasure, guys.
This was a
I've
blast.
never seen anything crazy, by the way.
Really?
I've seen crazy shit with people.
I thought when I was in a school trip once, I was a plane. I'm almost positive. It was
This is the craziest there's been. Me and my dad would play this game called Hide the Weevil with my grandpa,
Sure
which is
you would.
already very weird.
Okay.
What happened was I'll explain this game. This is all true. My dad thought it would be funny to hide the baby Jesus and put a demon in its
like
place.
the lock, like they do with
Yeah, and my dad took it. My grandpa took it, cut it up in a million pieces, and sent it to him like some serial killer.
Oh my
But
God.
then he thought it was funny, and then they went back and forth. So we would do this thing where we would drop the weevil, and whoever got the weevil by Christmas, they lost or whatever. We
Right.
got in my grandpa's house. This is after my grandma died. We opened one of the doors, and it was just my grandma's chemo wig on a stump and an axe. And I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And my dad
this
goes,
explains a lot.
"I don't want to play this game." And we stopped playing the game.
That is a high stakes game, man.
A lot of strange things about people, but not aliens.
That's your UFO, right?
That's my
there.
closest UFO.
I was gonna say,
You can't identify it.
humans are much stranger than any UFO case I've
Exactly.
ever investigated.
Exactly.
Ryan,
Exactly.
please, you have Somewhere in the Skies, which I've been listening to for a long time. Fantastic podcast. You can get anywhere, obviously, and YouTube. It's on YouTube as well. And then you have a second podcast as well if you want to plug that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you listening. I've been doing the UFO thing forever. We're going on 8 years strong with Somewhere in the Skies. We'll be celebrating our 400th episode.
Wow.
Whoa,
Oh,
congratulations.
thank you. It's been a long road. But I also I've always had an interest in professional wrestling. So a buddy of mine, a comedian here in New York as well, Andrew Sanford, he and we chat wrestling.
Andy
every
Sanford
week.
or-
Andrew.
Okay,
Andy,
that's
yeah. Andy Sanford moved back to Atlanta.
Right.
And we did that typical middle-aged white guy thing where we said, "Hey, we talk about this. Why don't we make a podcast?"
Yeah, that's
So
great. And what's it called?
It's called Somewhere in the Ring. So I've got the somewhere the
It's
thing going.
It's the network. It's the Somewhere in the network.
Well, I will totally co-sign on your UFO project, but actually being in the wrestling business now, I cannot encourage you to do a wrestling.
I completely
You
understand.
fucking company man.
I spent 5 years.
I get
my
it.
life
That's a good one.
dedicated. So that's awesome. Yeah, check out his podcast.
Guys, check out our YouTube. Also, BURBS Bros on Instagram. You can check out me at Shawnee Time on Instagram. Dan.
Yeah, we have BURBS Bros on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. I also have my specials online, both the one I did with 800 Pound Gorilla and my Comedy Central one. And follow me on Instagram.
And thank you to Pat, our producer. Thank you so much. And Stan the Comedy Club. And we'll see you soon. See you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye. Thanks, guys. Bye. Thanks, guys.
Bye, you guys.
See you later, buddy.